Hello, everybody. This is a Lamley showcase. I've got a fun one for you. We're just going to play with cars for the next few minutes. That's why I selected a Saturday to do this one, or the weekend. I don't know exactly when I'm going to post this one. But I've got the new 72 Chevy ramp truck. I talked about this one. I said I was a bit obsessed with this one when I did the Team Transport showcase earlier this week. Mentioned that I love the fact that this new casting, A, is licensed, B, it's a classic Chevy pickup, and C, at least in this particular version, they did it more in a stock look. They didn't do any like racing deco or anything like that. Obviously, we're going to see this in racing deco or some sort of branding in the future, which will be great. Hopefully some vintage racing types. But I love the fact that the first release just looks like a truck with just a truck that was converted into a ramp truck. And that leaves endless possibilities. So all we're doing today is taking this fantastic ramp truck and combining cars with it. Hot Wheels, mainly all premium, mainly from car culture, vintage racing, things that I thought might work. I'll show you the original set. We already showcased this one, but you can see the vibe here, and it's kind of perfect. This is a 50, what is it? What year is this one? 61 Impala. And they did it in a vintage racing kind of deco, and they obviously included the El Segundo Chevrolet. It really does have that classic old school vintage race car look to it. It really is fantastic on its own, but it looks great paired with this Chevy ramp truck like it's being driven to a race, a show, a car show, whatever. It's just got that vibe. So you can do all kinds of things with this, you know, like present day, it's driving to like a car show, vintage racing, it's going to a racetrack, it's going to like a local racetrack and bring in some sort of beater. Like I said, the possibilities are endless. So I picked some cars. Some make total sense, like they're vintage racing Chevrolets. Some I said are blasphemous. They are. I think I've got a couple Fords I might put on top of this thing. I've got some JDM cars, some classic. Almost all of them are race cars. Well, in fact, I think you can consider every single one of them, with one exception, race cars. Let's get to that exception. That's this one. I just was curious. I love this Impala. It's in the new Boulevard series, and I just thought, you know, I would love to see this one being driven by a Chevy truck to like a Cars and Coffee present day. So I just wanted to put it together. I don't even know if I can make any comments with this one, but I just like the combination. I could see this Impala showing up in a Team Transport with this truck, but we're obviously not going to see this black one, and I just think the iconic version of this Impala is the black version. So I just had to put these two Impalas together first on top of it. So my guess is, due to licensing things, you're only going to see Chevrolets on top of this thing. There might be some surprises in future releases, so this is some fantasy combinations. But I might buy a few of these Team Transports just so I can have a fleet of these Chevys, because I just love the idea of like creating a little diorama setting with these. So let's start with the Chevys. Let's start with the obvious. This is a chance for me to showcase some older models. I love doing this, going back into the collection, picking out some models that maybe you weren't too familiar with. And let's go into what was Drag Strip Demons. I still have to do my full Drag Strip Demons showcase. This is the Wilshire Shaker. The actual casting is the 63 Chevy Nova. It's an AFX car. You know, it has the funny kind of modified, not kind of, fully modified chassis, where the wheels look closer together for drag racing. I should put these right on top. The first thing I should do is put it on top of the truck, right, so that you can see it. Well, actually, we're doing both, right? We have it on the turntable without the truck and on the turntable with the truck. This one is an obvious choice. This one is one I think we're probably... I just don't know how Hot Wheels would not do this combination, because it just makes perfect sense that this truck is driving a gasser, aka AFX car. Is this AFX or is this BF? I don't know. To a race back in the day. So this one makes perfect sense. We're gonna, at the end of this, I'll kind of, like, you know, maybe I'll put over here, we're just going on the fly here. I'll put over here like the ones that I just think are the perfect combinations. But then again, it's probably gonna be all of them. Here's the next car. This is from Vintage Racing. I think I pulled this one out of Vintage Racing. Vintage Racing was a 30-car set that I think they wanted to do further. This is the 72 Chevrolet Vega Pro Stock. We've seen this actually in Team Transport, and not showing up too much. It's actually a really, really cool casting. It may have been made for Vintage Racing. And just like the Chevy Nova, I'll put the Nova ahead of this one, but I really do love that combination. Same vibe here, right? Vintage racing, drag race. this truck showing up, parking in the utility spot. I hope you're losing yourself in those kind of like old school. I mean, there's like, dudes with tight t-shirts and mustaches, feathered hair, and cowboy boots, And anyway, we'll just keep going. I had to pull this one out. This one came from Car Culture. This was originally in Fast and Furious, right? It's the lifted Camaro. I've seen some people bagging on this casting. I love this casting. And I'm not even like I've made my opinion on Fast and Furious known. I don't care much about the unique Fast and Furious decos, and this is definitely a unique Fast and Furious car. I don't know if I've seen too many lifted. This is the 60. It's a 60. It's 67 Camaro. But I love this, and I love that they did this version with the Lucas oil. It just kind of makes sense. It works for me, and I really have ended up liking this casting a lot. And I like that they did the stock deco for Fast and Furious, but I actually like this one a little bit more because it kind of fits the vibe. And I just think this combination is perfect as well. Really, really cool combination, that 67 lifted Camaro. I think that's a very unappreciated casting. And funny because it's from the movie and has kind of a big role, doesn't it? Falls out of an airplane. Anyway. All right, same vibe. Vintage racing again. I had to move to some Camaros, of course. This casting I think has only been done once. Maybe I even did it in a one-hit wonder. Old, reliable. It's got that huge intake on the hood. Sorry, I'm gonna move my shadows here. Came out of Vintage Racing. I think this was also redone for, what was it? Well, that racing series that they did. Anyway, I just think that one is a cool casting. I didn't realize I was creating shadow, but I think this one here, I gotta put it together like this. What are you gonna say? I mean, this does two things. One is I love the combination. Makes me go back to this day. Like this could be at a kind of Goodwood style race or like a vintage race now, but I just think, but I like it back in the day. I like that vibe better. All right, so I'm really, really digging this one. I mean, vintage racing, Chevrolet, American cars. I mean, what are you going to do? All of those work perfectly. Let's keep going with vintage racing. Let's go to this 67 Camaro. So we had the lifted. Now we get the... Is it Yannick? I see. I just grabbed cars. I should have read, because this gold and black livery on the Camaro, and then of course I have the Chevelle. You can actually see it in the background. I got the Chevelle after this one. This out of vintage racing. Some were fantasy, but a lot of them were based on real cars. This is one of them, the number 13, and yeah, going to a race, going to a classic car show, you name it, it's perfect. I love it. I don't know what else to say about that one. This gives you a chance to see these awesome castings, and it's cool to see something that's already iconic in the 67 Camaro take on an actual racing look, and kind of a combination of both. And then of course it looks great in the truck, and if that does, then so does the Chevelle. So number 13 as well. This Chevelle casting, I think, was made for Car Culture, if I remember correctly. And I'm going to use this one twice. This is in the licensed livery, of course, out of vintage racing. And does it work on the Ram truck? Well, duh, of course it does. It looks fantastic. Gold rims on this one with the Steelies. And I should have, yeah, sometimes I'm terrible at this. I was having a conversation with Glenn Chow over at Mini GT, and I said, I'm learning a lot of racing history. That's part of the fun here, is learning on the fly. But then if I'm learning this stuff as we go, I take pride in not knowing stuff and then learning as we go, but I got to remember them too. So that's on me to remember the names and everything else, and I'll get better at this. All right, I'm going to use that same Chevelle casting. This time, this one has a very, kind of NASCAR look to it, classic NASCAR look. The Goodyear tires on it. Really, really dig this one as well. This one is also in the racing series, which I think looks really, really nice. And of course, it just makes sense. I don't know what kind of haulers they had back in the day for NASCAR, but I love this two-tone yellow and blue, and it looks really perfect on the truck as well. Can you see this? We're just playing. All of these, I think we could go into this mix of the best, but I'll reserve like 3 or 4, and then we'll pick our favorites. And of course, I want comments down below on the ones that you think are best. Sun is kind of coming and going. Next one, went back to car culture, went to the first year of car culture. I got a handful of Corvettes that I want to add still as we're going Chevrolet. This is the, what's the name of this casting? It's the 69 Corvette Racer. So it has the open top, right? It's this topless Corvette that I think started as a basic. It's been a super treasure hunt, but did get into car culture here at this point. And I think this is one I just, because of the racing livery on it, I wanted to add it. And yeah, of course it looks awesome. As we're going, you can give thumbs up, thumbs down in comments. Tell me which ones. I really want to know which ones you like the best. Which I mean, all work, of course, but that one is a really good one. Now, this one I think is up there with as one of my favorites as well. I thought about a lot of these 69 Corvettes, the Copo Corvettes, but the one I wanted to get was I think the Copo Corvette. It was a toy fair, started in the basic range. The best Copo, if you can only have one of the Hot Wheels castings, is the James Garner from that difficult to find racing, like Hot Wheels RCR series. This is the Garner Corvette. And James Garner, if you know who James Garner is, I think you older folk do. I don't know if you younger folk do, but look him up. Hollywood star, but also an avid race car driver, just an avid car guy. And I think owned racing teams, might have raced cars himself, you know, kind of for fun, like Steve McQueen or Paul Newman. But I think they got pretty serious too. Anyway, this one is one of his cars, one of his Copo Corvettes, and I think it's just so beautifully done. It's so clean. And this one, actually, I'm going to put over on the favorites. And as a matter of fact, out of that same series, you had to know this one was going to be put together with the Chevy Ram truck. How about the original Greenwood Corvette? Now, this is the first one because it's so long, I got to like move back here. But this is the original Greenwood, designed by Junimai, one of my all-time favorite Hot Wheels cars. I think that has been well established throughout the years, that this Greenwood Corvette is one of my favorite castings. It's also one of my favorite cars, this first release of the Greenwood, with the Goodyear tires, with the 76 Sebring livery on it, which is a licensed livery. It's just perfect. It's one of my favorites, and I had to combine it with the Chevy truck. Now, this one obviously sits, because it's got the long nose, it has to sit on that second notch, but it works. It wouldn't drag. I don't know if we'd ever see this on the Chevy truck, but it is one of my favorite combinations. So it joins the Garner and the, we'll get to these in a second, and the Nova as on my favorites list, on my best combinations. All right, those are the Chevrolets. Let's move on to some of the others. Like I said, I might get a little blasphemous. I try to not go too far into other American brands. I don't think I grabbed a Mopar. I probably should have. But, and again, you're giving me thumbs up, you're giving me thumbs down, you're telling me what you like, what you don't like. Also tell me what you want to see, like Hot Wheels castings that you'd like to see on this, and maybe I'll post some pictures later. As we go. All right, I had to do this one also out of vintage racing. I had to go with the 71 AMC Javelin AMX. This is a great one. Also very hard to find, highly desirable from the vintage racing series in the number 6. Love it in the red, white, and blue livery. The casting is just awesome. It gets all of those details in the front and back. And yeah, would it show up on a Chevy? I don't know. Could. But that looks so good. You know what? I love my Greenwood Corvette, but I'm going to take my Greenwood out just because it's too long for this combination. And I'm going to add this as just, I just think that combination is just awesome. I'm putting the Javelin there. I had to make that call as we went. All right. Okay, I said I'd get blasphemous. How about a Ford on a Chevy? You guys ready? I picked 2 Fords. I wonder if you guys can guess. First one comes from that RCR, or that Hot Wheels Racing series. It's the 1940 Ford Coupe. I wanted to go way back, not just muscle and 60s and 70s cars, but I wanted to go way back, and I just thought this combination might look awesome. And it does. This is a casting. I don't collect a lot of cars from this era, but I really do like this one, and I think it's just so well done. And I think with all the race cars I've got, this one fits in nicely in my displays. I have the vintage racing, which feeds into, on my wall displays, vintage racing, which feeds into Drag Strip Demons, which I still needed to showcase, which feeds into those racing series, which then feeds into car culture. and I think they look really, really good together. So that's a great combination right there, that Ford. The other one, I had to go classic racing car. It's another casting that I think I've well established as one of my favorites and looks so good as a vintage race car, and that is the Ford Galaxy. There was a bunch I could have picked from. This is the 65 Ford Galaxy 500. My father actually owned this car, not in racing livery. But I went with this nice, clean, very vintage looking one from, in fact, Vintage Racing. Another Junimai casting that I really like. Junimai is known for all of his JDM, but I think the Greenwood and the Galaxy are his best castings from his time at Hot Wheels. Now he's doing crazy things over at Kaido House, but I really like his Galaxy and his Greenwood. Those are my two favorite Junimai castings. One day we'll have to talk to him about all that stuff. All right. Anyway, I just love this combination. It'll never happen. Ford will never let it happen. Chevy will never let it happen in terms of an actual package, but that is a great combination. Out of fairness to our Ford and Chevy fans, I will not put that in my favorites. I'll leave the Javelin there, and then we will continue on. All right, you want to see some JDM? I wanted to go mainly vintage. I didn't do a ton of JDM cars, but the first one I thought, I'll go a little modern. It's more modern than most of the stuff I'm showing, and I had to go with some drift car because look, if you're going to show up at a drift event, how great would it be showing up like this, right? In a vintage Chevy truck. I just think that is a ton of style showing up, especially if you showed up in Japan like this. I think that is an amazing combination, isn't it? I just think that is so cool, and I absolutely love this duo, the HKS Silvia, S15 Silvia, combined with the Chevy truck. It just seems like if I'm a drift racer and I don't have, some really cool box truck, how great would it be? You show up like this cowboy hat, and then you get in your drift car and you go win the whole event. I think that would be super cool. So we'll dig in that one. If I'm going vintage JDM, you knew this one was going to come out, Vintage Racing. You ready for the BRE? Of course you are. 510 Datsun. Don't drop it. It's so valuable. This one makes sense. Casting's a little big compared, like from these eras. Like this is another Junimai classic. I think I like the Galaxy and the Greenwood better, but this car is just amazing. And maybe this did show up on a Chevy at one point, going to a race here in the United States. I'm not sure. But the number 46 John Morton BRE is a classic, iconic car, kind of rekindled in the diecast world over the last decade or so. And this is obviously a highly desirable casting, and it looks great on top of this Chevrolet. Not as great as some, but it's just in terms of vintage racing goes, I just love that combination for sure. And lastly, out of the JDM section, if we're going with the BRE as an iconic Japanese race car, even though it was raced here in the U.S., right? I had to go over to Japan and go with Godzilla, the classic Godzilla. There's been several versions released of this racing livery, of this absolutely iconic racing livery of the Hakosuka Skyline. And I went with the most complete. There was a basic version of this, and there was the first mix of Japan Historics. But this one out of Team Transport with the JDM Legends logo on the back is the most complete version with the front and back detailing and all of the racing stripes. And I just thought this one had to go together with the Chevrolet. And same thing, showing up to either a Cars and Coffee or a vintage race. I don't know if it would have showed up back in the 70s on top of this truck, but I think the combination really, really works. And I'll put that one in my best of group that we'll get to. All right, had to go Euro. And I really like the Euro combinations. In fact, this was inspired by a picture I saw, and I mentioned this in the last video on Team Transport, that I saw a picture of an actual Chevy ramp truck with a classic Porsche on it at a Luftgekühlt event. It's a big car show for Porsche. And I thought that combination was so perfect. So I wanted to save the Euro cars because I thought these combinations are great. So we're going to start with the McLaren. Again, we're not going as vintage as maybe others, and you would never put an F1 GTR on a Chevy truck. You would never transport it this way. Let's just put it that way. I love the combination, but I had to try it. Doesn't totally work. It's so outlandish. It doesn't have any real vintage vibes, and who's going to put a $1 gajillion car on a ramp truck like this, so I had to put it together. It doesn't totally work, but I like the combination. All right, let's go to some vintage cars. I had to go with a couple of Mercedes, then we're going to finish off with Porsche. I didn't go any Italian cars. Let's start with the Red Pig. I think this combination has to work pretty well. Red Pig, first AMG Mercedes, right? And then, you know, that's become quite the relationship, AMG and Mercedes-Benz. The Red Pig is known as the first race car that was developed by AMG. And I love this Hot Wheels casting, and it has such a vintage vibe with the vintage racing graphics on it, the way it sits, the fact that it has the bumpers, deletes on the front and back. It's just a great casting. Seems like you could see this one being transported by a Chevy truck, 300 SEL, and I think that combination really, really works. Yeah, I'm digging that one. I think that one is awesome. Awesome. I'm going to save it, though, because I've got a couple more that I think are even better. Okay, here's another one. I just don't think the combination totally works, but I had to put it together because it's such a great race car. It's the Mercedes-Benz AMG C-Class Racer. Still waiting for the second version of this one. I think it's coming. But this one in the D2 Deco is just so phenomenal, and one of my favorites from last year, and I think one of the best executed models. I think this one has to go on the second notch. Again, I just don't think you got to have some realism here. I just don't think this car is going to be transported this way. I could be wrong. I love the combination, but it's not as realistic. It's more like in the realm of the McLaren on top of this truck, but I had to put it together, and I think that one looks kind of cool, but we're going to move on. All right, let's put another cajillion-dollar car on here, but more in the era, more era appropriate. Maybe this would transport a Rally 959. So let's try it. Seen this released twice, right? Plain white, but this is the first kind of homage, kind of tribute livery on the Porsche 959. Obviously, we just bought the RLC, which is more based on the stock 959. And Car Culture, we saw this rally off-road style, which I think is cool. And I could see this one being transported this way. Not 100%, and plus this car would be so valuable, so I don't think it would be a present-day kind of thing. Maybe back in the 80s they could have been transported this way, but it wouldn't have done very well off-road, even though it was a pickup truck. But that's a decent combination. Another multi-cajillion-dollar car that I just had to put together is the Advan Porsche, the Porsche 962. Such an iconic race car. Don't even know if you could even get this on a Chevy Ramp truck. Maybe you could. So I had to put this together and do this combination. I think it has to go in the second notch as well. I like it. I think it works. But it really doesn't work. You and I both know it doesn't work. But I like it. Anyway, decent combination. Not realistic. You'll never ever see it. Okay. I thought this one, in terms of vintage racing, might work. Never today. You could maybe see it presented at a Goodwood, but you would never see the car being driven off and on a ramp on a regular basis. But I do like this combination a lot with this one. Could have gone with the RLC, but we're staying in the Car Culture range. The Golf Porsche 917, right? I just had to put this together. I thought the casting was cool. This one, as unrealistic as it is today, I just think that combination has such a vibe to it, such a cool vibe to it, so I had to put those two together. I think people will like that one. I think a lot of people will give that one the thumbs up. So I wanted to include that one. And then lastly, the last one, and then we'll pick the best. In the Porsche range, I thought about some other classic Porsches. Hot Wheels needs to do like a classic, like first gen 911 in a racing livery, and I would have added that for sure. But again, I don't know how realistic this is, but this is the combination with a Porsche that I really liked. I went back to that road RCR set that the Greenwood and the James Garner Corvette came from, and I had to add this one. Now, this casting has been in Car Culture 2 or 3 times, right? I think it's even been in Team Transport. But I had to go back to the very first release of this Porsche. It's the 935, and it has a long nose, but it still fits in that first slot. And I just think that this combination is, I don't know, there's just something about this combination that really, really works. Better than any of the other Porsches that I put on, any of the other Euro cars that I put on. So I'm going to put this one down. I'm going to take the Porsche, I'm going to take the truck over here and I'm going to add it. We'll go down just a little bit. I'm going to add it, that plus the Hakoska, the Godzilla Hakoska race car, the Javelin, which took place of the Greenwood, the Garner Corvette, and the Nova. Those, I think, are the 5 best. You guys can tell me if you agree or not, but I think those are the 5 best cars. And you know what? Sorry for the shadow here. In fact, I'll just move this whole... There, let's move the whole camera and get these kind of put over here. Sun is playing with me today. So you can see them all. Which one goes best with this? This one surprised me. I really like that combination. That one really, really worked for me. I really like the Garner. I love the vibe of showing up to a Japanese race event with this. In fact, the combination wise, actually my favorite combination might honestly be this. Now that I think about it, I just love that combination, how it just shouldn't work, but it really, really does. That might be my favorite one. So I'll put the HKS there too. I think in terms of looks though, it has to come down to either the Porsche, because I just love that combination with the Porsche, or maybe the ultimate winner, which is a combination we could definitely see, is the Nova AFX gasser. It's not really a gasser, but the AFX car. I think I have to say that this is the winner, but I think my favorite is that one. I'm doing this on the fly, guys. I did not know which ones I'd pick. I had kind of an idea, like with the Greenwood and stuff, but as I'm doing this now, that's why it could probably change in like an hour. But right now, I think that's my favorite combination. I think the one that makes the most sense is that one. You guys tell me what you think. I want to know all kinds of ideas. You guys throw it out there. Real cars that Hot Wheels should make to put on this thing. Castings that they have now that they should put on this thing. Post some pictures. Tag me in it on Instagram or Facebook. I want to see them all. I just wanted to play with cars this Saturday afternoon, and that's exactly what I did. You guys tell me what you think. Thank you, Hot Wheels, for sending this. This Team Transport should be out very, very soon. Bye.